Sorry, are we streaming? Okay. All right, I'll give everybody a couple of seconds here to settle down. All right, I shall call this special meeting to order. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Councillor Singh. Okay, just a comment on the agenda. So the process we've gone through here today, we called a special meeting. Typically, council has 4 total meetings per month. This month, because there are 5 Mondays in the month, we didn't actually have a meeting in place to get this pulled together. So based on the timelines, however, we know that the FrancoSud school needs a decision made by the end of the month. We did call this special meeting, and that's why there's nothing else on the agendas, because it's just for this. But also due to that time constraint, we weren't able to pull together a public feedback environment that would allow all the stakeholders and all the parties that are affected to have an opportunity to provide their input in the form of a public hearing or anything like that. And so we're not going to be able to do that this evening. It's just in the interest of fairness for all parties that wouldn't have had time to pull everything together. I do, however, appreciate everybody who has taken the opportunity to be here this evening. I think council and I all agree it's wonderful to see so many engaged people here tonight. So with that, I shall call the question just on the agenda. All in favor of adopting the agenda? Carried. Okay, and that brings us into our single agenda item, item 3A, FrancoSud school site. Director Krasinski, please give us a presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Thank you for having me here this evening for tonight's special meeting of Council to present and discuss the results of administration's school site search for FrancoSud. The purpose of this report and presentation is to inform a decision by Council on whether or not to provide a letter of support for FrancoSud to request design and ultimately construction funding from the province for construction of a school site at a future site known as South Bow Landing North. A little more information here on the situational overview. The purpose of this slide is to give a quick overview. FrancoSud has identified an urgent need for a new school in Cochrane that's been represented as one of their top priorities in multiple 3-year capital plans. FrancoSud has listed the secondary school as their top priority in the most recent draft 3-year capital plan for 2027 to 2030. They're requesting a letter of support for a shovel-ready site to request provincial funding for design before April 1st, hence the purpose of the special meeting. And there are no future school sites in Cochrane that do not have a shared or competing interest by either of the other school boards of Rocky View Schools or Calgary Catholic School District. Next, I wanted to take you through the background of key milestones and activities since administration was first approached by FrancoSud. FrancoSud approached administration in late 2023 to begin work on identification of a school site to satisfy their urgent need for a new high school facility in the community. This initial request culminated in a report to Council in April 2025 requesting a letter of support for the use of the vacant municipal property 136 Quigley Drive adjacent to FrancoSud's current and only school in Cochrane, Notre-Dame-des-Vallées. This request was ultimately rejected by Council and administration was directed to continue working with FrancoSud. Following that meeting, administration met with FrancoSud in July 2025 to establish site criteria that could be applied to all parcels in Cochrane. In August, administration completed an analysis and provided a draft report to FrancoSud. In September, that identified, ranked, and scored all potential alternative sites based on the criteria established with FrancoSud, and the site search entailed really looking at pretty much anything over 3 acres in size across the community with the relevant zoning in place. We'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. The intent of the report was to support FrancoSud with their conversations with other school boards in Cochrane, namely Rocky View Schools and Calgary Catholic School District. In December and January, administration provided an update to Council, finalized the site search in your package, and had a series of meetings with relevant interest holders and subject matter experts. It was over the course of these meetings that FrancoSud provided an update that the results of their engagement with Rocky View Schools and Calgary Catholic School District, the primary message they received was that they could only support FrancoSud's preferred site subject to a condition that an alternative site be identified and allocated to Rocky View schools that met their site criteria. This is a condition that we could not meet prior to the April 1 funding deadline, also identified in this slide. In February, administration followed up with Calgary Catholic School District and FrancoSud and Rocky View Schools individually to discuss and confirm the feedback they provided with Rocky View Schools, as well as some concerns, and reported back to executive leadership team. We then convened all three school boards to pursue another opportunity to reach consensus with a special strategic opportunity identified by administration. Unfortunately, we were unable to reach consensus, which has led to the series of reports and presentations to council in March, culminating in tonight's meeting. This slide provides an overview of the criteria that was established with FrancoSud to evaluate the 15 sites across Cochrane that met the minimum size requirements established with FrancoSud. Namely, that site criteria, which was then weighted and scored and applied to the sites with site size, availability, public favorability, council favorability, vehicular accessibility, pedestrian access, planning process, timing, and shovel readiness timeline projections. The top 5 sites identified through this report were Sunset Ridge North, South Bow Landing North, Horse Creek Sports Park, Rolling Trails, the MR site in Rolling Trails, I should say, and a reconsideration of the existing parcel was asked for less support last year, 136 Quigley Drive, which I should provide an update. FrancoSud has since identified, since they've gone through additional analysis, no longer meets the criteria with the new criteria established collaboratively with administration. The preferred site identified of the top 5 options by FrancoSud was the site known as South by Landing North, shown here, identified on the left, just north of a future James Walker Trail. It's in the process of being finalized later this year. It's an approximately 7.6 acre site that straddles the boundaries of both the community of South Bow Landing as well as the summit of Riversong. So 2 different developers involved here, Qualico as well as Calbridge Developments. The estimate for when this site would be shovel ready is between 2028 and 2030. We do have a current plan subdivision application that planning is in the process of reviewing and completed circulation for the subdivision of the site, which is one of the steps prior to servicing it. So I wanted to take you through a little bit of the 3-year capital plans next of the different school sites to help level set some of the information you have in your packages and augment some of the additional communication you received over the past week. I'm going to start here, and this is really prepared for last year's school site status report, the annual report that we started bringing to council last year in January. As we went through the process this year, council has not seen it yet, as we identified really the new 3-year capital plans come out in April. So bringing it in January with providing outdated information fairly late in the game. You will see a school site status report in Q2. We just changed the timing of it. This slide identifies the timeline from how long it takes to construct a school through the planning process. Effectively, the first step in requesting funding for a school from the province is the identification of a need on a 3-year capital plan. Once it's identified on a 3-year capital plan, a site that's shovel ready or likely to be shovel ready, provided with a letter of support, needs to be identified before they can access design funding and then construction funding. And then it's about a 4 to 7 year process from start to end, with about 3 to 4 years of going through the planning and development approvals, the procurement process with the province, and then ultimately construction. This is a highlight of FrancoSud's 26 to 29 3-year capital plan. We're available. We're highlighting the 2026 to 2029 3-year capital plans for all 3 school boards. Calgary Catholic School District was unable to provide their 2027 to 2030 3-year capital plan, so you won't see this. As you can see here, Cochrane is identified as the #1 priority in the 26 to 29 3-year capital plan for FrancoSud last year. Please kind of ignore the reference to the years on the left there. Those are a typo. And this is the 27 to 30 3-year capital plan. On the bottom there in green, you can see again, a high school site for Cochrane remains the top priority for rural capital priorities for FrancoSud. Next, I'm highlighting the Rocky View Schools capital priorities, which is the other school board that has a competing interest in the South Bow Landing North property that is yet to be created and still owned by Qualico. As you can see, last year, the top priority for Rocky View Schools was the Horse Creek School, which received a funding announcement earlier this year, followed by the Heartland School, which did not receive funding this year, and you will notice has become the top priority for Rocky View Schools in their current 27 to 30 3-year capital plan. There are two other schools in Rocky View Schools' 3-year capital plan, namely Heritage Hills and South Bow Landing, identified at the bottom as the 11th priority of their rural developments. Finally, Calgary Catholic School District, as I mentioned previously, we were unable to access the 27 to 30 3-year capital plan. However, I've highlighted where a new school for Cochrane is identified as the 21st priority in year 3. I'm not sure exactly at this time how it has changed or the priority has been updated. However, there are 2 sites that Calgary Catholic School District has expressed an interest in Cochrane that could satisfy this request with relatively similar timelines. This slide is an update from the school site status report from last year. I've gone through and updated a few components. What is of main interest I wanted to highlight was of course, this school has been removed. I didn't want to fully take it off of here, but of course, the opportunity to develop the site adjacent to Notre Dame de Vallée is not available anymore. And then you'll notice South Bow Landing North is identified here, and it is not shovel ready. At the current time, however, is in the process of subdivision application, as I mentioned. The other property on this list that was on the 15 sites in the top 5 identified in the report was the Sunset Ridge North School, which is also not ready. There's also a subdivision application that is impending for this site as well, subject to certain conditions and considerations, namely a secondary access that needs to be identified prior to that subdivision being able to be endorsed or approved by the municipality. As I go through some of these, you'll notice the Horse Creek School site was funded this year. Heritage Hills, which is another site that Rocky View Schools has expressed an interest in, but is not currently shovel ready. It has been subdivided, but not serviced at this time. The Heartland School, which is their #1 priority, that is shovel ready and the top priority for Rocky View Schools. The Rivercrest School, that is in the process of having its development permit approved and has been endorsed. And Rocky View, this Rivercrest School is in the process of going to be starting construction here soon. And then the South Bow West School I wanted to highlight as well. This is a school that has an interest expressed in it by the Calgary Catholic School District. It is a little bit longer timeline for shovel readiness than the Sunset North property, as it has some temporary infrastructure on the site that may take a little bit more time to complete stripping and grading for. And this is South Bow Landing East School, which is likely the longest lead time school on this list that has another interest expressed in it by Rocky View Schools. Back to the slide a little bit, and I'm just highlighting here the South Bow Landing North, when it would be shovel ready based on the timelines that we would expect. Of course, this is all subject to the quality of subdivision applications and the how quickly a developer satisfies any conditions involved in it. But as I mentioned, the subdivision application is in, and those will have some conditions that need to be satisfied. Of course, servicing takes some time to complete as well, but I just wanted to frame what our projected estimates would be. This would be the earliest it would likely be available based on a subdivision timeline showing around 2028. For this slide, I want to take you through a little bit of the comparison of the capacity and alternatives. Of course, the current school, as I referenced, has a shared interest and expressed in it by Rocky View Schools. And the school just highlights based on the 2027 to 2030 capacity identified in their 3-year capital plans, a capacity of 80%, showing where the school is highlighted in the capital priority 3-year capital plan is number 11 as their budget request. Alternative sites that they have an interest in being Heartland, Heritage Hills, South Bow Landing East, shown on the previous maps. And then the in-progress schools being Rivercrest School, which is the closest to completing, and then Horse Creek High School, which is now moving on to a design phase. FrancoSud, Notre Dame de Vallée, has a capacity of 89 to 102%. Where you'll see the variation there is the 80% is reflective of September 2025. 89% is also reflected of September 2025 for FrancoSud. However, their current updated capacity that they calculated earlier this year was 92%, and 102% takes into consideration the pre-kindergarten population that is in the school. If that's added in, they're actually over their 100% for usage. The three-year capital plan priority, as I mentioned previously, was the #1 priority in 2026 and 2027 three-year capital plans, and they do not have alternative sites or any other sites in progress. A little bit of an overview of the Rockview School Board engagement summary. Rockview Schools is projecting a need for 2,000 students in South Bow Landing. Requires 2 sites in South Bow Landing. As we went through this engagement process, it highlighted the pace of development in South Bow Landing, and they did want to express their need for 2 schools in this area. Their three-year capital plans, current school sites under construction, and awarded funding are required to address current need, not future projected needs. So it's something important that they really wanted to make sure that was highlighted here. The schools that they've put in their three-year capital plan are to address a current need, not necessarily a future need. Of course, some of the long-term lead time ones are based on maybe a deeper analysis of the historical developments that are further along in their development journey. Percentage of the community served. I'll highlight that Rockview Schools currently serves 90% of the student population, something that they wanted to highlight as well to substantiate the need for schools in the community that they believe may be slightly disproportionate. And then other alternatives and optimization options for FrancoSud. They had identified that perhaps there could be a preference for FrancoSud to use other locations, such as Bow Ridge, which based on administration's opinion and some of the research we've done is not a developable site for a school and has been offered to other school boards previously. Effectively, all 3 school boards believe that site is undevelopable, so I did want to highlight it was referenced. However, it's a position of administration, and I believe FrancoSud as well, it's not a developable site. Also, Horse Creek Sports Park, which there are opportunities, but that would come at a competing interest. Unfortunately, all the options looked at in that 15-site list, none of them are free of another competing interest. Of course, the Horse Creek's property will take longer to get to shovel ready. There's also competing municipal uses and interests for that parcel, similar to a couple of the other ones on the top 5. There are other municipal interests and uses for the site that are needed. And then renovation or removal of the daycare was another identification that isn't included in Rockview Schools calculations. They don't have preschool or post-school childcare, and they felt like that was a consideration. That being said, if I think back to last year and the identification of the need and why FrancoSud has identified an urgent need, it was more than just the accommodation of classrooms for students, but the extracurricular components as well, such as facilities for band or a gymnasium that would support middle and high school kids and other amenities that could not be accommodated through the activation of a single daycare, preschool, or post-school care area. That being said, the one thing I did neglect from including in this slide was Rockview Schools did highlight multiple times that should an alternate site be available, made available for them that met their site criteria, they did not have concerns with FrancoSud utilizing the site. And it's important to keep that in mind. I don't think they're being difficult. They're just trying to look out for the needs that they have in the future. However, that's not a condition that we would be able to satisfy at this time. As a result of the timing of when we typically identify the need for a school site, being at an area structure plan phase, there would be a need for an area structure plan amendment application or a new area structure plan or an area redevelopment plan application to come in order for the municipality to identify the need or an interest in the creation of a school site based on our historical practice. So some of the options that you have contained in your report. Option 1, endorse administration providing FrancoSud with a letter of support and direct administration to continue working with all impacted school boards to secure an additional school site for when it is needed. Option 2, direct administration to continue assisting FrancoSud with pursuing potential sites that have previously been identified by administration in their site search and analysis FrancoSud Secondary School in Cochrane report, or any other potential suitable or approachable sites that FrancoSud may identify. Option 3 would be any other ideas that Council has to present for us today for consideration. Obviously, always an option. Value proposition side. So looking at that, I want to take a quick review of this now that we presented the options. First value proposition here, expediting construction of a new school infrastructure and relay community amenities. It's position of administration that this is a more positive under option 1, as the priority for FrancoSud is higher and has been that highest priority for multiple years in a row. It would be the most likely to receive provincial funding, and they are ready with planning, pre-planning funding, ready to commence that once they understand what site they could be doing pre-planning work for. It's also identified as a need for an earlier year as a priority for funding in 2027 versus 2029 at the earliest for both other alternative school boards. There's also addresses FrancoSud's urgent need for a school site and reduces transfers to other school boards. Only option 1 addresses the urgent need for FrancoSud at this time. Option 2 relies on us waiting for additional planning applications that although we have some motivated developers in the community that we believe would provide opportunities, cannot be guaranteed with any certainty. The risk to the joint use planning agreement timeline, relatively equal under both options. Effectively, we need consensus from all impacted parties, being the municipality and all 3 school boards, and there's a similar risk under either option of there being a lack of interest in moving forward with the current joint use planning agreement, although we believe the risk is similar in both. Financial impact is the same under both options. They don't have a financial impact on the municipality in terms of the need of purchasing a site or any other alternative considerations. It addresses the need for additional school sites in the community, and neither option addresses that need. At the end of the day, we're still in need of, based on our current count, an additional school site within Cochrane. Risk of appeal or legal challenge, there's a risk of appeal or legal challenge under either option. And reputational risk, there is a risk of risk to the reputation of the municipality under either option, either through not being able to identify a site to support FrancoSud, or a departure from our historical practice. I would say practice rather than policy of trying to pursue or follow through on identification of school sites at an area structure plan phase, which happens about 15 to 20 years before a school site is actually developed. That completes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right, thank you for the presentation. Council, can I get a motion on the floor for discussion? Councillor Gale. What would you like to move?
I'll move option 1.
Okay, so the motion on the floor for consideration is that we endorse the administration providing FrancoSud with a letter of support, and there's a second part, that we direct administration to continue working with all impacted school boards to secure an additional school site for when it's needed. Do we need 2 motions for those separate items, or can we do that with just one? Just the one motion. Okay, so who'd like to speak to the motion, provide comments, ask questions? Councillor Singh.
What's the typical infrastructure requirements for accommodating students in grade 7 to 12?
I'm sorry, to the chair, my apologies, Councillor Singh, could you repeat the question?
What are the typical infrastructure requirements for accommodating students in grade 7 to 12, like in terms of parks, like gymnasium, labs, just in that context, please?
Yeah, through the chair, through Mayor Nagel to Councillor Singh. The primary method in which we've been having these conversations through are the challenges with the existing infrastructure with FrancoSud. They do have high school age students attending school at Notre Dame de Vallée currently. What that entails is the school being designed for an elementary school means that the facilities were designed for younger children. So students aged in the age range of grade 7 to 12 are utilizing infrastructure that is designed for much younger children, also sharing that space. It's a similar concern with the gymnasium, which is not designed for students of that age range in age group. And I think there's been a desire, as I've met with and engaged with FrancoSud, for them to potentially not provide all of the opportunities, but at least some of the opportunities of whether that's a drama class or a theater to host that within a band room, possibly a science lab. There's a lot of dual usage happening in that school, including the leveraging of office space for students in higher grades in order to accommodate it. So there would be a larger gym amenity and then some sort of combination of theater or a band room, as well as appropriately sized amenities for students of that age.
Councillor Federico?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Was there ever an update provided to council? I looked through the weekly minutes from January till beginning of March or mid-March, and I don't believe I saw it there either. Was there ever an update provided to council from mid-December to mid-March about where this file was at?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Federico. In around mid-December, there was a series of questions, I believe, inquiries from one of your councillor peers. And in response to that, there was an update provided, which was an update to the update, I believe, provided in September of 2025. However, there have been some changing goalposts with the timing of it. When we met with FrancoSud in December, after their initial engagements with the 3 other school boards, we became aware of a need to endeavor to expedite the process of engagement we were going through, which was allowing FrancoSud to work with the school board peers and see if they could come to a consensus and discuss the options identified, followed by us then confirming and following up on any concerns or opportunities to maybe overcome obstacles with impacted school boards, and then finally culminating with a more detailed consideration of a potential strategy and facilitating a conversation with the team that had been working with the group through the joint use planning agreement, out of a hope that perhaps some existing relationships would help spark additional conversations and ideas.
Yeah, thanks. I think the last email that I saw is that we were supposed to get an update. I just don't know where that update ever ended up, which is fair, which is fine. I'm going to be quite honest, and I'm going to speak frankly, because I was a part of this council when we had to make this really not great decision the last time. It saddens me to sit up here again and to once again be asked or forced to make a decision where I feel like not all parties are even here. Yes, we've heard loudly, and thank you, FrancoSud families, for coming out tonight, for advocating for a decision. However, it also misses 2 other school boards who aren't in this room. And God forbid if we open it up to all school boards to sit here and talk about this decision. It's really horrible to sit here as a council member and be placed to try to make a decision on a very contentious item, because there's no winner. There's no winner no matter what we decide here tonight. And I've got to tell you, like, out of the first time out of this term, this is one of the hardest decisions coming in front of us. And I really hated the fact that the last time we were in this situation, I felt placed in it because half the community didn't know. When we sat in that meeting back in, I don't even know when it was, June or...
It was June of 2025.
When we sat in front of the community with West Terrace families who seemed to know nothing about this, but yet administratively there were talks, council seemed to know nothing about. I not only did those residents feel blindsided, I felt blindsided as a council member. Again, coming to this decision here tonight, I feel a bit blindsided that we've only had less than, I don't even know, 2 weeks to try to figure out what we're going to do. How do we handle, it's not just about one school winning a school, it's about how do you have a relationship with Rocky View School Division, Calgary Catholic, and everybody working together. And I feel like right now, there is no win, and there's no decision that I could even possibly make here tonight because somebody loses out, and that's not the position I want to be in as a council member. I want all of us to work together collaboratively to figure out a decision, and I don't feel like I can just stick my letter of support on anything tonight because I don't have enough I don't have enough information to make that decision. I spent a great amount of time listening to the advocates, and I gotta say, from FrancoSud, they did a fantastic job. I also had to listen to the Rocky View School Board Chair, who also did their part on advocating for why this can happen right now. Honestly, it puts council in a very bad decision. So I'm willing to listen to the rest of my colleagues, but I'm really, really not liking being up here tonight. And yeah, I just don't know what that decision looks like for me right now.
Councillor Gale.
Could we quickly go back to the Horse Creek property, whether it be for, no matter the school board, I would just like to know the possibility of putting 2 schools on that site. It is quite a big site, so I'm just wondering what shovel readiness would be like if we divided it, what Rocky View, for example, or CSSD would think if they got a second school site there. Just for some more info on that, if you could provide any.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Gale, the typical size for a high school is approximately 20 acres. The site is sized for 30 acres. It's my understanding that there was an intentionality behind the size of the site by Rocky View Schools. However, the potential to provide a school site either there or on other portions of that site that are not owned and operated by Rocky View Schools is an option. But the impact is that it would be a longer lead time for shovel readiness of that site. There would be additional servicing required, and it would be a slightly longer lead time, which is why it wasn't ranking as high as the South Bow Landing North site. Administration tried to do what we could do in identifying sites and supporting in that way, scoring and ranking them with the criteria established collaboratively with FrancoSud. However, we did not try and lobby for one specific site over another. It would still come at the expense of either additional recreational facilities for the community or lost land for Rocky View Schools for their intended purpose of it. But I would say that area could be available to any school board whenever they need it as an option in the future, if that was a desire to be considered. However, through the conversations with the school boards, even though it was discussed, consensus was not reached that would be a superior position. I believe Rocky View Schools, as I understand their position, is that when they talk about Horse Creek Sports Park, their reference is to the area outside of their 30 acres, not within the 30-acre site they currently have.
Yeah, and if I could just supplement that, I appreciate Mr. Krasinski's points. Like the Horse Creek Sports Park property is approximately 125 acres. There's 30 acres on the west side that is owned by the Rocky View School Division. The balance is owned by the town. The intent of those lands was to provide recreational opportunities for our community in the form of outdoor recreation. So if we were to put a school site, there is an opportunity to do that, just as Mr. Krasinski has indicated. However, that would be at the expense of the original vision of sports fields, recreation, other amenities that are required within this community.
So just so I have it, my understanding right, essentially we would have to take away from the recreational portion of it, but I think you mentioned 20 acres approximately for a high school. So that would mean roughly we would need to lose another 10 acres of the Horse Creek Sports Park to accommodate a second school site.
And of course, CEO Hyman will supplement this where necessary through the Mayor to Council Gale. The size range that FrancoSud was willing to accept for a future school site was in that 7 to 10 acre range for a high school. So it would take away between 7 and 10 acres. As you notice, the current site is not quite 10 acres as well. However, they're willing to compromise on their criteria for a site that is slightly closer to being shovel ready.
And if I can, there are some unique differences in Horse Creek as well. Just for some history, the Rocky View School Division purchased the entire quarter section in 2015. And then they were looking to do a subdivision in Rocky View County at that time to create a property for the school, a 40-acre property, but they wanted it to be serviced by the town of Cochrane. We indicated that we would not service a school outside of our jurisdiction. So we worked with the school board to enter into an agreement where they would acquire 30 acres and the town would acquire the balance. We would service their 30 acres for a future high school site, which has recently been completed. However, Mr. Krasinski is correct. The 30 acres is owned by Rocky View Schools. So if Rocky View Schools wanted the additional 10 acres to be utilized by another party, they would have to agree to that.
And is there any sort of indication as to whether they would be interested in having that second site as their own?
I have not been part of those conversations. Certainly I defer to Mr. Krasinski if he's had part of those conversations.
Through the mayor to Councillor Gale, I believe those were discussed. My staff is primarily meeting in a lot of these meetings. However, I'm confident that it was discussed and it did not end up coming up as an alternative that they reached consensus on. So I have confidence it would have been an alternative that would have been discussed, but I was not in the room for that specific conversation. And I know we did discuss all 5 of the options with Rocky View Schools when we had our follow-up meeting with them of what other alternative sites they would be in support of. So it was asked in a generic way about all the sites. It was the report that they had an opportunity to see, but not a specific targeted question on that.
Okay, and I think my last one here. Roughly how long would it be to get a second site on that property shovel ready? I know it's hard to say, but 5 years, 10 years?
Through the mayor to Councillor Gill again, I think one of the challenges there will be funding. I think it isn't currently funded. Any additional servicing on the site will come at an additional cost to the municipality, and it's not currently planned. So I would probably about 18 months to 24 months to get to that point. And there are some other system related considerations that would have to be thought of that may need to be completed ahead of time.
Okay, that's all for now. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I just had one question for administration. I'm leaning in favor of option 1 tonight. Is there any reason if we go with option 1 that our VS couldn't eventually have 2 sites in South Bow Landing? South Bow West and East, for example, is the footprint size too small? Is there any reason why there can't still be 2 RVS sites?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wilson, the short answer is no. There's an interest already expressed in that site by Calgary Catholic School District. However, it would be consistent with the approach we're talking about right now, which is an allocation of a site based on greatest need at the time of consideration. We are currently in the process of completing a joint use planning agreement, and the mechanism in which how sites are allocated is one of the conditions and the clauses that will be provided with additional clarity. The current guidance in the Municipal Government Act is without a joint use planning agreement, the subdivision authority is responsible for a decision on school sites, which is delegated down through the organization.
Okay, thank you. And just to fill in that last blank, then that means it's currently council until JUPA is set up and rolling, is that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wilson, it would actually currently be subdivision authority is currently a development officer, which would be a planner in the municipality. Because there's such a significant community impact, administration felt like it was important to bring this to council.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate that. From my vantage point, I've been reading everything I can about this, including the great letters that were provided to us from RVS, which were very compelling to me, and then also talking to the FrancoSud people. I think that obviously for tonight, option 1 is the way to go. We cost FrancoSud a year of school building essentially by not finding a site last June when we were here, and it sounds like we have until April 1st to cause another year delay in a school in Cochrane, and that doesn't sit well with me. So I think the play tonight is to go with option 1, get FrancoSud building, and then figure out exactly how we make RVS happy and get their needs covered, and in the future CCSD as well. I have confidence in the amount of sites coming on. I have confidence in the JUPA process, which is going to help us make decisions in the future with those sites. And I think everybody can win in the end with this, and that's at least my hope and my belief from everything I've read here. I think it is important that we give a letter of support tonight to make sure that the school gets under construction as fast as possible, and we have about 24 hours to get there. So that would be my thoughts on the matter. I'd be in support of option 1.
Okay, we're gonna go around, give everybody one chance to speak before we go back to the second chance for people. So Councillor McDonald will be next.
Thank you. I was curious, sorry, am I on? It's on. No.
Just one sec. Yeah, just wait so people outside can hear you.
Perfect. Amending the ASP to find an additional school site, how long, I'm sorry if I missed that, how long and how likely would that be to go back for an amendment?
Through the mayor to Councillor McDonald, there are some developers that are currently considering future developments in the municipality that we have been working through existing area structure plan amendment applications that have other conditions which need to be satisfied. That would provide an opportunity for us in council to request that. Also, through the circulation, we have a few communities, something you'd be familiar with, well, no particular order. Rolling Trails may need an area redevelopment plan amendment because of some other ongoing work the municipality and the developer are considering. There is not approval on Rivers Ridge, who has a development in progress already, but that's something that would have to go back to council, as well as Walker's Reach, which also is coming forward for a area structure plan amendment in order to accommodate their plans for their community. So any of those would be opportunities if through the circulation process the school boards identify a need and an interest for council to express that need. And maybe look to CEO Hyman if he has any additional thoughts.
The only thing that I would share through the chair to Councillor McDonald is, and you had asked about the amending the ASP.
Yeah.
You know, and there was discussions at the workshop around the challenge that we've had tremendous growth in our community. I think that's putting additional pressure on school sites. When only 10% of the available land for pathways, schools, playgrounds, that puts a lot of pressure on creating school sites. So amending an ASP that's been in place for a number of years to create additional school sites, I think would be really, really challenging in that respect. So again, I think that's kind of reflects the nature of the situation that we're in. I've worked on with the school boards for a number of years since I started here 12 years ago, and 12 years ago, this was a much easier situation in that we would have a school board come forward and say, we need this school site, and it was really focused on primarily the Catholic School Board and in RBS, and RBS with a large percentage of the population would typically get the school sites. However, FrancoSud, our growth is part of their growth too. So they have needs, and we have 3 school boards at the table, all eager to support schools. And I think from my perspective, having additional schools in our community only makes it more attractive.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think similar to Councillor Wilson, I was just thinking, wouldn't it be ideal if regardless of what's decided tonight, or if we do support FrancoSud tonight, if we can go on and assure Rocky View schools that there will still be 2 school sites for them in South Bow, because I know it's really important to them that those 2 schools offering schooling for 2 different age groups be both in that quite large community at its full build out. So that's where I was going with that question. I was just curious about the JUPA. So I was reading the JUPA, it's new, it's under development, and that's required within the MGA, isn't it?
Through the mayor to Councillor McDonald, we've been directed by the province to have a joint use planning agreement in place for all municipalities who don't have one. By, I believe, July, I could be wrong, but I know it's June, July of this year. Is one of my peers is running that that process right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I bring that up only because in one of your slides, I think I read that possibly at risk here with tonight's decision is deterioration of the JUPA. So I just wanted to confirm that we, regardless of any reputational risk tonight or relationship risk tonight, the JUPA has to go forward. Is that correct?
Through the mayor to Councillor McDonald, that is correct. I would suspect in the absence of a JUPA, something is imposed by the province, but the process currently, some of my staff has been participating in that process as well, has been very positive and very collaborative in working through this. However, some of this is a bit of a pilot of a dispute resolution process of the joint use planning agreement and the desire to, if there was a desire to maintain the current practice of identifying, we'll call it earmarking, interests in school sites at the area structure plan phase, what it would look like when we have a different need evolve over the 10 to 15 to 20 year process it takes from that approval to the actual construction. So throughout that, I think you have the same risk on either side. Consensus may not be perceived as delivering outcomes that are desired for one party. However, it may be perceived as not being the outcome that a different party wanted.
Right.
And Councillor McDonald, if I can, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think the importance of the JUPA cannot be overstated. I do not want to put council, I do not want to put residents, kids, neighbors against neighbors. That's not a fair situation. Our current system, I think, that's part of the growth pressures, is not functioning as it should. So we need to have that system in place. The mayor and I were at AB Munis last week. I connected with my colleagues from Airdrie. They were one of the first ones to have the JUPA in place. And there is a process through, I understand, through their JUPA where if there was, they'll identify it at the ASP stage. However, if there's an emerging need, there is an opportunity where it's brought back to council for a decision. But I would want that to be the exception rather than the rule. We need an efficient process, and you know, everyone's taking time out of their evening tonight, and I appreciate that, and this is very important. But I would echo some of the comments that were made tonight. This is a very difficult decision for council, and just wanted to share that.
Yeah, it really is, and I agree with Councillor Federico. My discomfort here is that whatever decision we make is pitting us in favor of one school and opposed to another. Even though that might not be any of our intentions, that will be the very, very easy interpretation, is that an opportunity for one is a lack of opportunity for another, and that's a very, very uncomfortable position to be in. I have one more, sorry to take up so much time, but I have one more thing I just want to learn more about. I read as well that if it is deemed that we have a legal obligation to provide a site for FrancoSud, it would be at the expense of the town. And so also in the deck tonight, I saw that there's really no financial implication either way, but what I just read suggests to me that there is some financial risk. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor McDonald, that would be, I believe, something that would need to be tested through likely some sort of legal action.
Okay.
However, the way that I meant that slide was not that there wouldn't be a financial application, but that the financial implication could be the same in either option, regardless of which one was chosen.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for all of that. Where I sit now, I've spoken to FrancoSud families over the last week. I've spoken to the FrancoSud trustee. I've spoken to the Rocky View School trustee. And I've watched all of the footage from 2025, from when this decision came forward regarding the Quigley site. While Councillor Federico's comments are really important to me, that the system is not supporting this decision in the way that she felt they needed in 2025 and perhaps this year. What I dislike the most about that is that both in 2025 from my view and tonight from my view, who continues to be the afterthought is the FrancoSud families. And that's not something that I want to keep perpetuating. It's our obligation as a community to be planning for all three of our school boards and to providing opportunity for all three of our school boards. So where I sit tonight is that I will support going ahead with option number one. That's me so far.
Okay. All right. I'd like to weigh in if I could. So I appreciate everybody being here. Similar to my colleagues, I've had a lot of conversations with people with varying perspectives. Spoke with both school boards, well, Rocky View as well as FrancoSud. Have not directly connected with the Catholic School Board, but I have been following all the emails and messages very closely. And yeah, it's true, tonight we're not gonna be able to make everybody happy, but such is politics. And even though we're not gonna be able to make everybody happy, I actually, I don't have a hard time identifying what I feel is the best decision. For me, I just have to look at the fact that Cochrane's growing so quickly. We're behind on all of our facilities, schools, certainly one of the things we're behind on, and I just need to ask myself, what decision do we need to make tonight to get the most schools possible as quickly as possible? And when I ask myself that question, it's very obvious that we need to work with FrancoSud to get the Francophone school system going here in Cochrane. And it's not like we're comparing apples to apples when we're looking at the capital priorities, because we have one school board, the FrancoSud School Board, who, if we give them the site, they are ready to move with it immediately as their number one capital priority. The other two school boards, who also want the site, are not in the same position. If we give them the school site, they're going to leave it on ice and try and get funding for it further down the road. So, you know, with Rocky View, in their overall capital strategy, this site is their 11th priority. Of course, it's a bigger list of schools, so it's not, you know, comparing their list with the FrancoSud list is not exactly the same because they're different sizes. However, it's Rocky View has other opportunities that they are moving forwards with. We already have the Rivercrest School, construction of which the funding was just recently announced, as well as design funding for high school at Horse Creek. And then after that, there's still Heartland, which has not yet been funded, but is for the Rocky View School Division. And there's still the Heritage Hill site, which is for Rocky View, which has not yet been funded. Only after all four of those went forwards, then would we turn to the South Pole Landing site and hope that the Alberta government would support Rocky View in getting a school there. And then the Catholic School Board, Cochrane is 21st in their capital priority list. And I think it's great that they're all caught up in their school facilities. So it just seems to me that it makes a lot of sense to go with the school that is ready to build right now, but that does not mean we are not going to continue supporting the other school boards. I really want to be clear that from my perspective, when I look at this, it's not that we're taking a school away from Rocky View to give it to somebody else. There are more school sites that we're going to continue working on. We're going to continue taking action to get them all ready and build schools, working with the school boards and the Alberta government as quickly as possible. And I really believe even if we move forward with FrancoSud tonight, we can still have another school site ready for Rocky View when they need it. After they're done Rivercrest, after they're done Horse Creek, after they're done Heartland, after they're done Heritage Hills, we're going to have a school site ready for them for their next priority. And then I want to speak to another one of the cases that I have heard that people have suggested that the numbers at FrancoSud don't necessarily support the high school, but I think that's, you're kind of, anybody who's making that case, I think it's kind of like a chicken and egg sort of argument. Of course, their numbers are lower, they don't have a proper high school. We need to get them a proper high school so that they can get their numbers up. And when I talked to the school board, they made it very clear that there's close to 700 kids in this community that they estimate would be eligible to join the Francophone school system. And in the younger grades, they already have class sizes at an average of 25 students. And that's without even the promise of a high school. And they have asserted, and I believe, that once you have that promise of a high school in the school system, those younger grades are going to grow from 25 kids and become larger, because there's going to be a high school to feed them into. And in addition to the capital logic and the numbers logic, I also just believe in diversity of education in our community. French is an official language in our country, and I believe Cochrane's French community deserves a place to get a French education. And on top of that, it's already been mentioned that they tried to come here and get a school on Quigley last year, fought very hard for a school, and the community said no, and council said no at that time, and they said come back with another option. Well, this is the other option they've come back with, and I'm in favor of this option for sure. And the timing as to why now, why not wait, it's simply because of the capital funding process. We need to give them some clarification as to how to move forwards by the end of tonight or tomorrow at the absolute latest, so they can get in their capital funding, because if we don't, we're just kicking the can down the road another 12 months, which just means one more year until Cochrane gets another school. So for that reason, I am in favor of this. And Rocky View, if you're watching, the Catholic School Division, if you're watching, I promise I will also continue to help work to get more school sites for those divisions as well. Okay, back on the council. I think if I was watching the lights correctly, I think Councillor Singh is next. Sorry, Councillor Singh, can you restart so everybody outside can hear you?
Sure.
Thank you.
It is understood that a FrancoSud has been seeking a secondary school since 2017 and has included this need in its capital priority list for past 2 years. Could you provide further details on this? It's not a first time they're asking, and I believe, as my colleagues mentioned, 2025, the site that was not appropriate. Could you explain on to that, please? Yeah.
Through the mayor to Councillor Singh, I can confirm from the period of time that I was here, and I did a little bit more research on it today. Starting in 2024, it was their second priority. It became their first priority in 2025, and then their first priority again in 2026. My understanding is that there was another site that was discussed earlier on with Bow Ridge that was just not conducive for use by any school site. But I would maybe look to CAO Hyman if you wanted to shed some additional light on anything I missed with respect to that 2015 timeline.
No, and I've been here since 2015 and certainly worked with all the school boards, and there was not the need in the past that certainly emerged over the last number of years with our growth. And I think I commented on the Francophones or FrancoSud's growth is mirroring the growth of our community. So that's where the desire to have a high school site has really emerged over the last several years.
Sure, okay, thank you.
Councillor Verdejo?
If a collaborative decision was to come forward with some sort of solution of some kind, whether or not we're talking South Bow, but we're talking about finding that other school site, because I don't believe that South Bow can just have one public school site. That is, we have 3 school sites. One is Catholic, 2 are public. One goes to FrancoSud, we have 1 left. It's a 7,500 to 10,000 people population base as far as I'm aware. Is there an opportunity somewhere to create, say, I don't know, on one of the parcels to have kind of what exists in Fireside, where you have a Calgary Catholic school as well as a public school? Is there an opportunity to subdivide some of those parcels, or is that not even an option?
Through the mayor to Councillor Fedeko, I believe we did a fairly exhaustive look and discussion with the school boards. However, I think that are the options that we're referring to in the second point of option 1, is to continue having all these conversations to identify what opportunities there are to ensure that all school boards are made whole. I'm aware of the current priority, the current desire through this engagement that Calgary Catholic School District has expressed to me, is the priority is to be south of the river, ideally east of Highway 22, and that's the area that we would ideally be searching for them within. However, the different school boards all have different criteria based on the different populations that they serve. FrancoSud is in this situation is a little bit, their priority is shovel readiness to address the historical need. Calgary Catholic School District being a little bit more distributed through the community is slightly different, and then Rocky View Schools, representing about 90% of the community, has stronger criteria in that sense of their desire to be within all the communities to provide that walkability because of the large amount of population they serve and the impact on infrastructure costs. So slightly different throughout all of them, and the short answer to your question is it's all available to be considered in the future by any school board that needs to be made whole through the process.
Yeah, it doesn't answer my question on timing. So I'm going to be very honest. I want to support the FrancoSud community and their school. I just can't at this opportunity. I think that I don't want to end up in a place where we're moving a site, giving it to a different site, trying to find a solution for another site without actually having that answer. That to me is unfair, just as it's unfair for then to take a site and give it to another school. I don't feel comfortable with any of this. And it's not that I don't want to support, it's that it puts us in a very, very bad place, in an uncomfortable situation with no time and opportunity to hear from 2 other school boards and those people impacted. Yeah, I'm really uncomfortable with this decision, but for right now, until we actually can come together with a collaborative approach where we don't have families pitting families, kids pitting kids, because that's exactly what this entire thing is going to turn into, I'm not in support.
Councillor Wilson?
I just wanted to take a second to ask the big picture question too, because Councillor Fedeko is raising good points, which is that none of us want to be in the situation where we're making these decisions. There was at least a couple sites mentioned on the slides up there, the Bow Ridge site, the Glen Eagle site, which were deemed ineligible to be school sites. They were provided zone for it, and they just sit there idle probably forever. I know these were decisions made in the mists of the past, probably when I was in high school, which was a very long time ago. Nobody in this room was part of those decisions. In the future, though, is there some level of confidence the council can have that administratively we've learned from those decisions that we can guide councils with future ASPs? We're not going to provide school sites that are inappropriate to the task at hand. I just thought that big picture question might be worth asking at this point too.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Wilson, the area structure planning process has evolved and matured over time as well in how we look at and evaluate school sites. And we're at a much stronger place than we were historically. Some of these sites have evolved to be identified as school sites, not necessarily in their original intent, or the required engineering wasn't complete on them. But I'm very confident in our current system and the review that not just our team, but our colleagues in engineering services and the civil land team do to ensure that the sites that we are identifying in future area structure plan areas for schools are developable in an economical sense, appropriate, sufficiently economical, flat level sites that can accommodate a school with the appropriate transportation corridors.
Excellent, thank you. And I assume both those sites in question and any others, it's slope related. Cochrane's biggest, finest, oldest problem is why they aren't eligible for school building as they are. Is it slope related?
Through the mayor, Councillor Wilson, Bow Ridge particularly with the drainage related to the slopes, it forms a bit of a bowl where all of your flooding pools.
Okay, well, thank you for that. That's optimistic news for future councils that we won't be sitting here with a lack of land and a need for schools.
Back to Councillor Gill.
My comments. I'm in support of option 1 because I think if there's a viable path to Cochrane getting another school sooner rather than later, I think we have a responsibility to pursue it. While also continuing to ensure we can work with Rocky View. I do, it is a really hard decision because I don't want to be seen as taking away from their school sites. However, I understand that might be the initial impression, but I really want to see continued collaboration with both Rocky View and CSSD, and I think that we can get there eventually, but for now I think FrancoSud they have the resources to get this done sooner than everyone else, and it's been a priority of theirs for so long. And so I'm in support of option 1 for those reasons, but I really want to underline how important it is to continue to work with Rocky View and CSSD because I don't want to put them or students out. So I think that's all. And thank you to the Franco families for meeting with me. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for the advocacy. That's all.
Councillor Singh, bring us home.
Thank you to all the parents coming here, teachers and the students. I would like to respectfully emphasize the importance of taking a proactive and a collaborative approach as we move forward. Too often decisions are deferred until circumstances require choosing between limited options. Instead, this presents an opportunity to think creatively and work together towards a solution that benefits the broader community. At this time, I believe supporting the FrancoSud School is both timely and necessary. Doing so would not only serve the needs of current families wishing to continue French language education locally, but also expanding educational opportunities contributes meaningful to a well-rounded live, work, play, and learn community, enhancing the overall quality of life for residents. As my colleagues mentioned, working with Rocky View and CCSD is the way forward, and I believe the administration is doing through JUPA, and looking forward to that stuff. So thank you.
Okay, before I call the question, I just want to reiterate one more time that I do not believe that if we give this to FrancoSud, that we're not going to be able to have enough school sites for the other school divisions. We have more sites to work with. There are conversations happening to get them ready. The work is actively evolving here in Cochrane, and this is the path forwards, I think, to get the most schools possible as quickly as possible. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Those opposed? Okay, thank you. All right. Truly, the thanks goes to all you families for advocating. So thank you very much for being here. Everybody have a great evening. And that is the end of our agenda. So thank you very much.